بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد النبي الأمي وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. Last week we were talking about how Adi ibn Hatim Radiallahu Anhu's sister was captured and brought to Medina Munawwara, and she had a dialogue with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in which she was asking the Blessed Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to release her and let her go. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not respond to her one way or another, that he would let her go or he's going to keep her captive. So on the third day, she says, وَقَدْ يَئِسْتُ. When he passed by on the third day, as he was entering the masjid, I thought about asking him and making the same request I had made the previous 2 days, but then nothing happened the first 2 days. So I thought, what's the point? And I was kind of despairing, and I didn't say anything. فَأَشَارَ إِلَيَّ رَجُلٌ خَلْفَهُ أَنْ قُومِي فَكَلِّمِي. A man behind the Blessed Prophet ﷺ, he gestured, motioned towards me, get up and talk to him. Meaning, don't give up. As I mentioned last week, before we ended the session, I told you that person was Ali ibn Abi Talib Radiallahu Anhu. And Ali ibn Abi Talib was the same person who was the commander of that unit that was sent to this tribe, and that captured this group of women and children and brought them back to Medina Munawwara. Anyhow, she said, he encouraged me, so I stood up and I said, Ya Rasulullah, halak al-walid wa ghab al-wafid, famnun alayya manna Allahu alayk. My father, he has passed away, and my caretaker, my guardian, my brother has deserted me. So please release me, be kind to me. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be kind to you. She is making dua for him. If you let me go, Allah will be kind to you. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says, فَإِنِّي قَدْ فَعَلْتُ. I have done it. Go. وَلَا تَعْجِلِي بِخُرُوجٍ. But you can't leave yet. حَتَّى تَجِدِي مِنْ قَوْمِكِ مَنْ يَكُونُ لَكِ ثِقَةً. And tell someone from your tribe, somebody who is your غير mahram, non-marriageable man from your family, comes and takes you back, because you can't go alone in the desert. Why? Because it's a treacherous land and it's dangerous. There's raiders, there's people that attack and will hurt you. You need to have some person with you who can escort you back to your tribe. So he said to her, I'll let you go, but stay here until somebody from your family comes and they can take you back. حَتَّى يُبْلِغُكِ إِلَى بَلَادِكِ ثُمَّ آذِنِينِ. Then after somebody does come, then come back to me and I'll let you go. So she says, I was very happy, and now I wanted to know, who is that man who urged me? I already told you, but she didn't know who it was. I wanted to know who that man was who had urged me to stand up and talk to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam for the third time, because had he not told me to, I would have not talked to him, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would not have let me go. So he has a big ihsan upon me. He's done a favor upon me. He's a kind man. Who is this man? So she's asking around here and there. So somebody tells her, Huwa Ali ibn Abi Talib. This is Ali ibn Abi Talib. Ama ta'arifina. You don't know him? How is she going to know him? She's not from Medina Munawwara. She's not even a Muslim. So how is she going to know Sahaba? And then he says, this person says, you don't know him? Huwa alladhi sabaki. He's the one who captured you in the first place. He's the one who captured you. So that leaves her in a little bit of a weird situation where she feels like she's got a soft heart towards him, but now she realizes he's the same person who put me in this situation. Right? Anyhow, she says, Wallah, ma huwa illa an subitu alqaytu al-burqa ala wajhi fama raytu ahadan hatta dakhaltu al-Madina. She said that since the time I was captured to the time I came to Medina Munawwara, I was brought to Medina Munawwara, I have not seen anybody and I have not taken my burqa off my face. She's not even a believer. But this was the concept of haya, even in the times of Jahiliyyah, amongst noble women. We don't even have that concept of haya in our Muslim women that the non-Muslim women had in the times of Jahiliyyah. And she said, I haven't seen a single person. I had my burqa on my face and I kept it that way until I arrived in Medina Munawwara and even beyond, because everybody around me was strangers to me. And I felt a sense of haya, modesty in front of these people. So how am I supposed to know who he was? Right? Anyhow, she said, I stayed in Medina Munawwara. Now during this time, it doesn't mention in the rawaya how long she stayed, but we know this much, that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was using the fact that she didn't have a mahram to take her back as an opportunity to keep her in Medina Munawwara for a longer period of time. Why? Why? So there was a Sahabi, his name is Thumama bin Athal. He's from the tribe of Banu Hanifa. I won't tell you his whole story. It's a very long story. He had killed many Sahaba when he was a disbeliever. He was one of the most biggest enemies of Islam and the Muslims. And he was one of the leaders of Banu Hanifa, the same tribe of Musaylimah Kadhab. Anyhow, the Sahaba were out somewhere on an expedition and he happened to be on his way to Makkah Mukarramah for Umrah. In those times, remember, we think of Umrah, we think you have to be Muslim. In those times, all Arabs performed Umrah and they performed Hajj according to their way. But they did perform Umrah. So he was going for Umrah and the Sahaba saw him. One or two of them recognized him. They said, we want this man. He's killed many of our companions, our friends. Get him. They brought him to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and said, this is Thumama. He killed Fula. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, okay. Tie him up to one of the pillars in Masjid al-Nabawi. Didn't kill him. Could have executed him right away. And every single day, for 3 days, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would come to him and ask him, what do you want me to do to you? What do you want me to do to you? Do you want me to let you go? Do you think I should execute you? So he said, I've killed many of your companions. If you execute me, that's your right. But if you release me, you're a very compassionate man. That would be very nice of you. It's another way of saying, I appreciate it. Right? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam didn't say anything to him. He just went on. This happened second day. Same thing that happened with the sister of Adi ibn Hatim, where she's talking to him, he doesn't respond. Second day, he asks the same question. She's talking, she responds, and he doesn't respond. And the third day, he asks the same question again. She responds, and he doesn't say anything. So he's doing the same thing with Thumama Radiallahu Anhu. This happens for 3 days, and then after 3 days, he says, let him go. Same thing he said to her, let her go. So now, they let him go. As soon as they released him, he was tied to the pillar. He went outside of Medina Munawwara, found some stream of water, took a bath there, came back and accepted Islam. Why? Because Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam saw potential in him to accept Islam. So he wanted to keep him there in that very beautiful, blessed environment in Masjid Nabawi, so he could sit there and observe and soak in the good company of the Sahaba and of course Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There's a brother just a few days ago, he was telling me something very interesting. He said, when my students come to me, and these are students from colleges and universities, and they got a lot of questions, right? They have a lot of questions about Islam and about so many different things. So he says, I tell them, don't ask me any question for 3 days. Or 4 days, I don't remember the amount of time he said. After 4 days, then you can ask me any question. After 4 days, he says to them, you have any questions? He said, no questions. Where you came the first day, you had so many questions. He said, we don't have any questions. Because sometimes we really don't have questions. We just need a good environment. The doubts that come up in our minds about our deen, about our faith, issues that we face, depressions that we have because of those issues, a lot of that gets solved just by a good environment. Just by soaking in good company of the people around us. And this was routine amongst our elders, our akabir. Maulana Ali Thani rahmatullahi even had it written on the door of the masjid. For all people who came to meet him, there was a rule. One of those rules was, there's like a whole list of rules. So one of them was, nobody will ask me questions for 1 week. After 1 week of sitting in my gathering, which was between Dhuhr and Asr, then after that you can ask many questions, but most of the people didn't have any questions anymore. And some of them came with a lot of questions. So when you live in bad company, it creates a lot of questions, right? You know, Yahud used to ask a lot of questions. To who? Anbiya alayhi salatu wasalam. Always ask questions because they were always in each other's company. What do you think they were always talking about? Money and dunya. Right? So when they came to the Anbiya, all they had was questions and arguments and debates and defiance and not wanting to listen. Right? So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he knew this from the very beginning. This is our nature. He's a good man. He was in a bad company his whole life. He just needs a little bit of good company and things will change like that. And this man is not like 15 years old. He's a well-known killer of many Muslims. Thumama. And all he needs is to sit in the Masjid al-Nabawi for 3 days. Salah are going on, the gatherings of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam are happening every single day, who knows how many times, and he's just watching as a captive. And he's soaking it in. 3 days later, he accepts Islam. So the same situation happens with her. She's staying in Medina Munawwara, and she's watching everything. So she's observing how Sahaba Ridwanullahi Majmain are going to the masjid. How many times a day? 5 times a day. And they're constantly in the masjid, sometimes to talk to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, sometimes to sit in the gathering. He saw their level of devotion, their level of taqwa, their level of deen in every aspect. Very impressed. Anyhow, she says, I stayed in Medina Munawwara until one of my family members from the tribe of Qudaa came, and she said, I decided now it's my time to leave. So I came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, she says, and she says that she told him that, you know, there's a group of people from my tribe or people that I have full trust in. They're related to me. They're willing to take me back. So they'll take me to Sham and drop me off at my brother's if you allow me. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam She says, فَكَسَانِي وَحَمَلَنِي وَأَعْطَانِي نَفْقَةً. He gave her some clothes, he gave her a ride, a camel, and gave her some money for her trip. Go. She's the daughter of who? Hatim Ta'i. So she's a very respectable person, a respectable daughter of a very well-known man of Arabia. She said, I came to Sham. Now, the narrator, before was his sister, now the narrator is Adi ibn Hatim, Radiallahu Anhu. He says, I was sitting with my family outside the house, and suddenly I noticed a caravan coming. And there was a woman in it. And I noticed it looked like my sister. And he was very ashamed because what had he done before? Left her behind. Right? So, تصوبوا إلي أمنا. So she was pointing towards me because she had seen me, so she's telling the caravan members, that's my brother right over there. So she said, there's my brother right over there. You can drop me off over there. So when she came, انسحلت تقول القاطع الظالم. She started right away launching. You zalim, oppressor. You qati'. You know what qati' means? It's the same word used in hadith. Qati' al-raham means the breaker of ties, the one who breaks ties. You are a man who breaks ties. Because in Arabia, breaking ties with your family member was one of the major sins, just like it's a major sin in Islam. These were the good qualities that the Arabs had, keeping ties with their relatives. And she says, what did you do to me? You left me all alone, ran off with your family to Sham like a chicken, and completely abandoned me. You're a qati', you're a zalim. احتملت بأهلك وولدك. You ran off with your wife and your child. وتركت بقية والدك. And you left the family members, the siblings. Baqiya means the remaining or the leftover of your father, meaning your siblings. So he says, Ya ukhayya, my younger sister, لا تقولي إلا خيرا. Forget about this. Let's talk about the good stuff. Because there's nothing else for him to say. He says, فَوَاللَّهِ مَالِي مِنْ عُذْرٍ, which tells you he was a good man. He said, listen, I admit, I made a mistake. I shouldn't have done this. قَدْ صَنَعْتُ مَا ذَكَرْتِ. I have done what you have said, meaning I've committed a crime. I was qati', I was zalim, I should have taken off with you, not without you. Anyhow, that was over. She stayed with him. Now Adi ibn Hatim starts asking her, what do you think of him? You were there in Medina Munawwara for what? A couple of months, a couple of days, a couple of weeks, most likely a couple of weeks at least. So you were there, you saw him, you saw his companions, you saw the environment there. What do you say? What's your opinion about him? So she says, Ara wallah an talhaqa bihi sari'an. She's not a Muslim. She's not a Muslimah herself yet. She says, Wallah, I think you should rush to Medina Munawwara right now. Go to him. فَإِنْ يَكُنِ الرَّجُلُ نَبِيًّا فَالسَّبْقُ إِلَيْهِ أَفْضَلُ. Because if he's a Nabi, then you need to go to him right away, because that's the most virtuous thing to do, to become a companion of a Nabi of Allah. وَإِنْ يَكُنْ مَلِكًا. And if he's not a Nabi, he's a king. He's at least a king. فَلَن تَذِلَّ فِي عِزِّ الْيَمَنِ. You will never be disgraced in front of him. You will never be disgraced. Now she says fi izz al-Yaman, which I think means, so tribes in Arabia were divided mainly into two groups. They were all considered Arabs, but they were mainly divided into two groups. One was the tribes that originally were from Yemen. So they're native Yemen. And then they migrated from Yemen and went all over the Arabian Peninsula. Some landed in Sham, some stayed in Yemen, some went in other places. A good example of that is the Ansar Sahaba. They were originally Yemeni Sahaba. Yemeni Arabs. But their forefathers moved from Yemen, migrated here, and they stayed in Yathrib. At that time it was called Yathrib. And the Yehudi community was already living there in Medina Munawwara from before. But what happened was the Yehud population was very small, and this Ansar, Banu Aus and Banu Khazraj tribe was very, very large. Anyhow, that was one group of Arabs. The other group of Arabs were the people who were the progeny, the children of Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam. The awlad of Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam, which is Banu Mudar, from Mudar, right? So this tribe, Banu Tay, the tribe of Adi ibn Hatim Radiallahu Anhu, was a Yemeni tribe. Originally, native, Yemeni tribe. So she says that she will never disrespect you because you are originally from Yemen. And Rasulullah's companions, a good number of them, in fact, most of them were Ansar. And Ansar were what? From Yemen originally, right? So she's saying that, look, I've seen that most of his supporters, most of his companions are all from Yemen. So even if he's not a Nabi, he's a king, if you're also from the same background, he's not going to disgrace you. He'll treat you with as much respect, even though your background and his is different. Meaning your ethnicity in terms of being Arab, which tribe you're from is different, or which forefather you're from is different. But still, he has a lot of respect for the others too. He'll give you that same respect. So you have nothing to worry about. It's a win-win situation for you. And then on top of that, anta, you are who you are. You're the son of Hatim Tay. وَوَالِدُكَ وَأَبُوكَ your father is your father, you are you, you're a well-known man, your father is a well-known man. And then she says, مَعَنِّي نُبِّئْتُ أَنَّ عِلْيَةَ أَصْحَابِهِ قَوْمُكَ الْأَوْسُ وَالْخَزْرَجِ, which proves what I said was right. Along with the fact that I've been informed that his most eminent Sahaba and the Sahaba who are closest to him are from your tribe. Not your tribe, from your people. Aus and Khazraj, meaning they're also from Yemen, you're also from Yemen. And then on top of that, you are Adi ibn Hatim, a nobleman, your father was a legend, right? Why would he disgrace you? You lose nothing, so just go. This is a man, Adi ibn Hatim is a man who hated Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Remember, when the tribe was being ambushed, attacked, he ran off because he didn't want to go to Medina Munawwara. He didn't want to even consider accepting Islam. He said, let me just go to Sham because that's where people from my same faith as myself live, so I'll just live with people of the same faith. Even if they're from a different ethnic background and I'm from because those people were all Greek speaking. He was Arab, but he still was not willing to go to Medina Munawwara and live with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, even though they were from the same background, both of them being Arabs. That's how much he hated Islam and how much he hated Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But she's telling him nothing to worry about. He's a good man. I don't know if he's a Nabi or not, but one way or another, you have nothing to lose. So he said, she kept on talking to me about this until she convinced me, and I decided I'm going to go. So I came. حتى أقدم على رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. I came to him in Medina Munawwara. فدخلت عليه وهو في مسجده. And I came while he was in the masjid. And people said, هذا عدي ibn Hatim. People knew him. This is Adi ibn Hatim. وَجِدْتُ بِغَيْرِ أَمَانٍ وَلَا كِتَابٍ. He said, I came to Medina Munawwara without aman and without a kitab. This is another way of saying I've come to another country without a visa. You know how you go to another country? Especially if it's what? A country that's at war with your country, then you definitely would go with it. Well, first of all, you won't go at all. And if you do, you definitely will make sure you secure yourself by what? Getting a visa. Getting protection. He's saying, I'm entering into enemy land. I'm in Medina Munawwara. Okay. And these people don't like us. And they know how much I hate Islam. And how many Muslims I've killed in the past. And here I'm entering Medina Munawwara without a visa. What's the visa? Visa basically in those times was aman. So you went to another person who was, for example, a Muslim, and you say to him, listen, I plan on coming to Medina Munawwara. Can you grant me asylum, protection? So that person would make an announcement in front of everybody. I've granted him aman. Nobody touch him. That was the visa of those days. Right? But he said, I didn't know anybody. I didn't make any plans to do such a thing. So I just came in like that. And people were looking at me. And some of them were telling Rasulullah, Adi ibn Hatim is here. And I was scared because I just walked in like that and I didn't have any form of protection on me. So he took a big chance. He said, I could possibly be killed right here on the spot. But since he'd heard so many good things about Rasulullah from his sister, and this is precisely what Rasulullah was keeping her in Medina Munawwara for, because his hope was he would convince her enough that she would be impressed, she would go back and convince the brother, and the brother would come even if it's without any protection. And in those, just like today, you go into enemy territory. For example, North Korea. Somebody from US going to North Korea and you go without a visa? Or you go to Iran. US and Iran have never got along, right? And you go without a visa? So it didn't happen like that even then, but he took his chance. Because she had convinced him. She had been talking to him for so long. You gotta go, you gotta go. And saying so many good things. He said, I just decided to go. So he said, the first thing I did when I entered the mosque, I just did salam. He was a Muslim. He said, Salaam alaikum, everyone. So nobody gave a response. They said, Manir Rajul, who's this guy? Never seen him, never heard of him. And he's giving salam as if he's a Muslim. So he said, I introduced myself. He said, I'm Adi ibn Hatim. So people rushed, grabbed me, and brought me to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had already told the Sahaba many weeks before. Now we don't know if this was a wahi that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam received, or based on the strategy that we just talked about, right? The strategy of keeping the sister for a long period of time in Medina Munawwara and then sending her off to convince her brother to send him here based on her good experience in Medina Munawwara. One way or another, he had told the Sahaba Ridwanullahi Majma'in, Inni la arju an yaj'al Allahu yadahu fi yadi. I have full conviction and belief that one day Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will put his hands in my hands. What does that mean? What does that mean? He'll put his hands in my hands. It could mean two things, and I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, oh yeah, shake my hand. Because when you shake somebody's hand and they shake your hand with both of their hands, your hand is between their hands. So that's a handshake. No, he's talking about making bay'ah, meaning accepting Islam. He will come to me and he will accept Islam. And that's how the bay'ah was done. You put both of your hands between the hands of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then he pronounced certain things, you repeated after him, and that was the oath that you gave to Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. All Sahaba did it. Nowadays they consider bay'ah a form of bid'ah. Nowadays everything is bid'ah. Even Snickers candy bar is a bid'ah. There was no Snickers candy bars in those days. Everything is a bid'ah. You have to define what does bid'ah really mean. Anyhow, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam completely forgot the gathering. Completely forgot the gathering. He got up, went straight to Adi ibn Hatim, and said, let's go home. We're going to my house right now. Now there has been some discussion amongst the scholars. Why did Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam take him home? He knew he was going to accept Islam. And the point is that when somebody comes to accept Islam, it's your responsibility to make sure that they accept as soon as possible, because we don't know when death comes upon us. So, if he is going to accept Islam, and he knew he's going to accept Islam, and he'd made that statement earlier to the Sahaba, then why did he delay it by telling him, let's go home? Because he's coming to him, and he's not saying, okay, sit down, let's talk, and then convince him about Islam, and he accepts Islam. Instead, what he's doing is, let's go home. Let's talk over there. He didn't want to talk in the masjid, so he's delaying the process of his Islam. Why did he do that? So there's some scholars have mentioned some very beautiful points regarding why Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam took him home. But we will talk about that inshallah. When? Next week. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun ala al-mursaleen walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Jazakumullah khair. Ahsan jazak. My apologies, not next week. 3 weeks from now, inshallah. So our next session will be 3 weeks from now. So next week our madrasa will be on break, so there will be no session next week, and the break will continue for 2 weeks, so the week after that as well. So the week after that, which is 3 weeks from now, inshallah, we will restart the session. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakallah for the reminder.